Thanks so much, everybody, for joining the workshop today. I know that there's been lots of crazy weather happening. We've been talking about it as speakers right before we got started. So hope everyone's cozy at your computers and looking forward to enjoying this webinar with you today. So my name is Shelly Callahan, and I am a consultant with Purple Dog Consulting, and I'm really excited to be moderating and kicking off the session today. In partnership with the Canadian Parks and Rec Association, Canadian Women in Sport are developing and delivering a series of workshops across Canada. And this workshop is one of 6 that will be taking place between now and March. And we're really excited to be partnering with different partners in each of these 6 workshops. Today, we have Sandy Ward from the Indigenous Women's Outdoors, Bree Thorlaskin from Pemberton Off-Road Cycling, and we have Karen Rust and Bryna Coppola from Pickleball Canada, and Beverly DeHatra from the Victoria Regional Pickleball Association. So we will get a chance to hear from everybody later, but really excited to have them on board for this workshop. The focus is to provide information on how to involve women in active living, with a special focus on engaging women 55 plus, new moms, newcomer, and Indigenous women. Okay, so did my screen, am I on the next slide? I don't think so. Oh, there we go. Okay, that's what I have to do. Getting used to my double system here. So I'd like us to take a moment to connect with the land that we're currently on. We're fortunate enough to be gathered from many different territories today, and we want to recognize the original occupants of the places where we reside and respect Indigenous people's beliefs and connection to the land, especially because those beliefs have been restricted for so long. If you want to take a moment to download the Whose Land app, which is a web-based app that uses GS technology to assist you in determining what Indigenous nations, territories, and communities across Canada you are on, or you can go to nativeland.ca on the website. And maybe everybody in the chat, if you can tell us what Indigenous land that you are on, that would be really cool to see where everybody's from. I live in Ottawa, and I'd like to acknowledge that I'm presenting from unceded Algonquin territory today. So as some of you may know, there are 5 calls to action related to sport in the Truth and Reconciliation Report. These calls to action ask that stories of Indigenous athletes are being told, support for long-term Indigenous athlete development, the barriers present in the Physical Activity and Sport Act are reduced and the inclusion of Indigenous people is promoted, that sport policies, programs, and initiatives are inclusive of Indigenous people by providing stable funding and access, athlete development, sport leaders who are culturally relevant and have received anti-racism training, and that Indigenous people's territorial protocols are respected and that local Indigenous communities are engaged in international sporting events. Indigenous women and girls are underrepresented in sport in this country, and they face multiple barriers to participation at all levels. It's our intention at Canadian Women in Sport that in addition to these calls to action, we continue to build relationships that will allow us to better address this gap through our work. I ask that you reflect on the information shared and recognize how these calls to action apply to your involvement in sport and society more broadly. I'd also like to say a few words about the woman that is in this slide. So this is Mary Two-Axe Early. She's a Mohawk elder and political activist in the 60s and 80s. She grew up in the Kwanawaki Reserve, a farming community adjacent to the St. Lawrence River in Montreal's South Shore. The Kwani are members of the Hudasaki Confederacy, 6 Nations or Iroquois Confederacy, and they're also known as the Keepers of the Eastern Door because of their geographical location at the most easterly reach of the Haudenosaunee territory. Mary fought to establish the Equal Rights for Indian Women organization. She was founding member of Quebec Native Women's Association and spent much of her life raising awareness and dismantling gender-based discrimination within the Indian Act. So our agenda for today in this really fun workshop is going to be to tell you a little bit about CPRA and Canadian women in sport, provide some foundational knowledge on gender equity and intersectionality, talk about some of the challenges women face to participation in active living and sport, some solutions that women have told us would work for them, and then hear about our regional partners, really where the rubber will meet the road, to let us know some of the really great things that they're up to, and then talk about some next steps. So first, a little bit about the Canadian Parks and Recreation Association. So they're a national organization dedicated to realizing the full potential of parks and recreation as a major contributor to the community health and vibrancy. In their 60-year history, they've been the national voice for parks and recreation, advancing the collective interests of our members. They're a national network dedicated to the well-being of people, communities, and the natural and built environment. And they provide services for their members and partners that cultivate dialogue, learning, and innovation. In 2018, the Government of Canada announced a target to achieve gender equity in sport at every level by 2035. The overall goal of the project is to increase the retention and participation of women and girls in recreational sport in Canada. The target populations identified are girls aged 9 to 15, new mothers, women aged 55 plus, and then girls and women with intersecting identities. Okay. A lot of this is based on the Framework for Recreation, which is a guiding document for public recreation providers in Canada. It provides a pathway to reach our goal where every citizen is engaged in meaningful, accessible recreation. Developed in full partnership with all the provincial territorial governments and CPRA, there's 5 goals. So the first goal is around active living, so fostering active living through physical recreation, inclusion and access, which is increasing inclusion and access to recreation for populations that face constraints, connecting with people and nature, so helping connect to nature, whoops, geez, sorry, that's my fault, through recreation, supportive environments to ensure the provision of supportive physical and social environments that encourage participation and build strong, caring communities. And then recreation capacity, which is ensuring the continued growth and sustainability of the recreation field. Our other partner is the Canadian Women in Sport, and they are a 40-year-old national organization that aspires to achieve equity for women in societies through the power of sport. They believe that sport is a powerful vehicle for change for women and girls. I think if I hit this has come up. The mission, they're dedicated to creating an equitable and inclusive Canadian sport and physical activity system that empowers girls and women as active participants and leaders within and through sport. With a focus on systemic change, they partner with governments, organizations, and leaders to challenge the status quo and advance solutions that result in measurable change. They do this through partnerships. Gender Equity and Recreational Sport program, this program that we're working on today, is a unique one and they're thrilled to partner with the Canadian Parks and Recreation Association to engage more women in the active living. You can visit them online at the website above, and a lot of this information will be sent to you after the presentation today. So some of the foundational knowledge. So what we talk about is equality versus equity. So you can see in the graphic on the screen under equality that everyone has a bike, but not everyone can ride it. The person with a disability needs adaptations. One's too big, one's too small. It really only fits the one person, you can see in the picture. Women may be able to attend, but what is being offered might not be for them. What they want to play, do they want to play with men, or is women's only better suited? We often do not consider what needs to be adapted to ensure equity. If you look at the pictures under equity, you can see that adaptations have been made so everyone can ride. A similar approach needs to be taken with recreation sport. To engage more women, you need to create an environment that works for them, that is welcoming and that is adapted to their needs. Women need to be invited, encouraged, and mentored. Engaging everyone in the organization, including men, to be allies for this to happen is essential. Gender equity is a process of allocating resources, programs, and decision-making fairly to all genders. This requires ensuring that everyone has access to a full range of opportunities to achieve the benefits that come from participating and leading in sport and physical activity without any discrimination on the basis of gender. It is important that you identify imbalances in your programming or organization that benefit one gender over another. Intersectionality is the interconnected nature of social categorizations that apply to an individual, creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. Not everyone experiences sport in the same way. Even if a group of women share some characteristics like gender or age, other aspects of their identity also impact how they experience recreation and sport. To achieve true gender equity, we must also consider culture, disability, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, ageism, and other intersections that can result in women being marginalized. When developing programs for women with intersectionality in mind, you need to consider their entire experience and background to ensure what is offered is appropriate and positive. So what does it look like for women? So access. So this is access to quality instructors, facilities, equipment, timing, no discrimination based on age, gender, or level. This diverse representation. So women are provided the opportunity and actively invited and encouraged to be part of boards, committees, coaching staff, leadership teams, any opportunities that are out there. Variety, women are provided with a variety of active living opportunities and consulted on what they do and what they want to do at what intensity. So what level do they want? Do they want to do mall walking and aquafit? I've heard from more women than not that have said, come on, I want to play basketball, just shorten the courts and lower the baskets. So, really providing that variety is important. And then visibility, women are seen actively participating in active living in marketing, websites, print materials, and mainstream media. I remember talking to Basketball Ontario once, and they said, why are the women portrayed as cheerleaders instead of players in all of our banners? So that's just one example of how you can make sure that women are visible. And then your role. So speak up, be vocal about equitable access, and question policies and practices that limit participation. Celebrate women participants by attending events, writing stories, creating awards. Train and certify women to be instructors, coaches, and officials. Recruit women leaders for boards, committees, staff. Invite women to participate and lead. You're going to hear about the invitation quite a bit in this presentation. I really think it's one of the most powerful things we can do to get women involved, because women often question if they can. So you need to invite them and tell them that they can. Communicate opportunities. Let women know about events, funding, and resources. Educate yourself and others. Understand the barriers to participation that women face, and share this information with others to find collective solutions. And then the last thing, Canadian Women in Sport offers a gender equity lens training that really goes in depth on what you can do around gender equity. So encourage everyone to go to the Canadian Women in Sport website and have a look for it and take this training. Okay, so on to the workshop. So some of the things we're going to talk about today. So we're going to talk about some of the challenges that women face to becoming active and staying active. Understand what motivates adult women to participate, and then how to assess your programs and apply strategies to increase participation of adult women in active living programs. So before we get started, want to provide a little bit of an update on who the women are. But before that, I believe, Crystal, we have a little fun poll.
We do. Vanessa's just trying to get it going here.
Okay.
So the poll is launched and we have about 40% of folks having participated. So Anybody who's on as a co-host, you won't be able to see the poll. I'll give it about 10 more seconds and then I'll share the results. 3, 2, 1. Shelly, are you able to see the results?
Yeah, I am. So it's your mom
Awesome.
and your friends. That's great. Real diversity though of different women. So really the idea of taking this poll at the beginning is, as we go through these slides and we think about women, I want you to really be thinking about who inspired you. And there's probably lots of women that have inspired you over the years, but really we are looking from their lens as we are doing this presentation. So Canadian women are a large and diverse population, many cultures, many backgrounds. During this webinar, we're going to provide information on what motivates women of all ages to be active, with some specific tips on the unique needs of moms, Indigenous women, newcomer women, and women 55 plus. So let's just get, so what does the data tell us? So this is the population pyramid in Canada. You've probably seen this before. So this is the aging of Canada's population in recent decades, and it compares the age-sex structure of the Canadian population. So believe it or not, there's pretty much as many men as there are women. As you can see, those sides are pretty even. But it is interesting, as people age, there tends to be more women than men. So one of the unique things about the Canadian population is the baby boom. So this big bulge that you see going through the system. So in 1999, baby boomers were in their 30s to mid 50s. And you can see the bulge in the little kind of blue line that's there to indicate that. And then in 2020 or 2019, individuals in the baby boom were between 54 and 74 years of age. And you can see the upward shift of this bulge going through. So the number of younger people, though, is people in their kind of mid 30s to late 40s has proportionally decreased. So what we're looking at is that there's at least 18% of the population in 2020 was 65 years of age at that time. So population aging affects the regions of the country. However, it's unequal. So some provinces are actually aging faster. The eastern provinces and central provinces, and in British Columbia, the proportion of people that are older is actually more. And in the territories and the prairie provinces, it's actually trending to be a little bit younger. So one of these things that we uniquely need to look at is with this baby boomer bulge, they've actually impacted a lot of things for us as we've grown across the country. So this aging population that is in their 50s, 60s, and 70s will continue to age. So the number of people we have at those higher age groups is just going to get more and more, just based on the pure number of people going through the demographics right now. In terms of Indigenous people, just to give you an idea, there's more than 1.6 million people in Canada that identify themselves as Indigenous. And this is according to the 2016 population, and that represents 4.9% of the Canadian population. Indigenous peoples are the fastest growing population in Canada, and it grew about 42.5% between 2006 and 2016. Indigenous people are also the youngest population in Canada. About 44% were under the age of 25 in 2016, compared to 28% of the non-Indigenous population. The map that is here on the screen shows a distribution of Indigenous populations across Canada. The figure includes the number of Indigenous individuals living in each province and territory, as well as what proportion of the overall population comprises Indigenous people. Indigenous people make up the largest proportion of the population of Nunavut, the Northwest Territories, and the Yukon Territory, followed by Manitoba and Saskatchewan. The inset table indicates what proportion of the overall Indigenous population resides in each province and territory. Although Indigenous peoples only comprise 3% of Ontario's population, it is home to the largest population of Indigenous people at 22%, 16% in British Columbia, followed by 15% in Alberta. The Canadian Constitution recognizes 3 groups of Indigenous peoples: First Nations, Inuit, and Métis. These are 3 distinct peoples with unique histories, languages, cultural practices, and spiritual beliefs. The map shows how the composition of Indigenous populations vary across provinces and territories. The term First Nations people includes registered Indians, also called status Indians, and non-status Indians. In 2016, registered Indians comprised 49% of the Indigenous population. Non-status Indians are 14% of Indigenous population. 40% live on reserve, 14% live in rural areas, 45% in urban areas. Inuit are the Indigenous people of the Arctic. The word Inuit means the people in the Inuit language of Inuktitut. Inuit comprise only 4% of the total Indigenous population, and the majority live in Inuit Nunavut. The term Métis is used to describe communities of mixed European and Indigenous descent across Western Canada, and is defined by the Métis Nation of Canada as a specific community of people which comprises distinct Métis communities developed along the routes of the fur trade and across the Northwest within the Métis Nation homeland. This homeland includes the 3 prairie provinces, as well as parts of Ontario, British Columbia, Northwest Territories, and the Northern United States. According to the 2016 census, Métis represent about 32% of the Indigenous population. So now we just want to look at female immigration trends. So this graph provides information on the trends over time of female immigrants as a percentage of the total female population. 2011 National Household Survey has estimated that 21.2% of the country's female population is made up of immigrant women. This marks the highest proportion of immigrants among Canada's female population is 100 years, the closest parallel. The total immigrant population has also grown to represent 20.6% of the total population in 2011. According to the reference scenario of Statistics Canada, if the 2001-2006 immigration trends continue, Canada would be home to 11.1 million immigrants in 2031. Of these, approximately 27.4% will be female. Now, looking at the age of the female immigrant population. So with an aging population, low fertility rates, immigration plays an important role in ensuring that Canada's population labor force continue to grow. Given that immigrant newcomers are on average younger than the Canadian-born population, immigration can help mitigate some of the challenges in an aging demographic. So between 2011 and 2016, the number of female immigrants were the largest number were 25 to 54 years at 61%. The 0 to 4 age group is at 17%, and the 55 plus group makes up at least 10%. When comparing the age of female immigrants over time, the percentages for all age groups remained similar, except for the 0 to 14 age group. Between 2001 and 2005, they represented 4% of female immigrants, compared to 11% 2006, 2010, and 17 between 2011 and 2016. So that population is growing considerably. In terms of country of birth, you would find it interesting to see that in the last census, the highest number of female immigrants actually came from the Philippines and surpassed China and India. And that we've also had a larger number of immigrants from Iran and Syria in the last census. Looking at household types, just to understand that, one-person households became the most common type of household for the first time in 2016. More women than men are living alone, with women accounting for 53.7% of one-person households in 2016. Among seniors, about 1/3 of women were living alone, compared to only 17.5% of men. The number of couples living without children rose faster than the number of couples with children as well in that time period. In 2016, the proportion of multi-generational households rose the fastest, 37.5% of all household types. This type of living arrangement is more common among Indigenous and immigrant populations, which account for a growing share of Canada's population. In terms of workforce population, in 2015, 82% of women in the core working ages of 25 to 54 participated in the labor market. This was compared to only 21% in 1950 and 65% in 1983. So that's a lot of women in the workforce compared to how it used to be. Between 1976 and 2015, the employment rate of women whose youngest child was under the age of 6 grew from 32% to 70%. During the same time, the employment rate of women with children aged 6 to 11 grew from 45 to 78%. So in the past, there used to be a lot of people staying at home when they had young children. Now a lot of people are in the workforce, really creating some new challenges around childcare. So in terms of participation, while the vast majority, both women and men, were employed on a full-time basis, women were overrepresented among those working part-time. 2015, 18.9% of employed women worked part-time, as did 5.5% of employed men. 75% of those working part-time were women. The reason most cited by women for working part-time was caring for children. So these are all things to consider when you're thinking about women participating in your programs and some of the different realities that they might have. So looking real quick then at sport participation and physical activity participation. So we're looking at 150 minutes per week and 18 years and older. So in that population, physical activity decreases with age with men, consistently reporting higher levels of physical activity with women than women. Close to 60% of women are physically active when they are 18 to 24. This percentage stays fairly consistent between 35 to 64 and then drops to 34% at age 65 plus. Additionally, according to the Statistics Canada Social Survey, 15% of immigrant women participate in sport or recreational organization compared to 30% of Canadian-born women. So definitely immigrant women are participating less. In terms of what the popular activities, number one is walking for lots of different reasons, especially access, followed by gardening, social dancing, and then some of the more popular sports are a little further down on the list. So let's get into some of the challenges to participation. So this graphic really does represent a lot of the ways a woman lives her life. And we call these on-ramps and off-ramps. So you can see throughout a woman's life, there may be different reasons why they get on that physical activity journey and different reasons why they come off it. You know, something like pregnancy and childcare, or having an illness or an injury, or having to care for participant or parents. So that whole idea of anytime someone gets off the ramp, our challenge is how to get them back on that ramp again. So I wanted to talk about some of the challenges women face to being active. So we kind of look at these in terms of the physical, emotional, social, and societal challenges. So some of the physical challenges, you know, health can be a constant challenge at any age, could be around pain, injuries, could be mental health and depression that could be a challenge they're facing. Access, you know, things like cost, childcare, elder care. Skill, lacking, you know, the skills to participate. Women really don't want to participate if they don't feel comfortable and competent doing things. So skill plays a big role. Programming, you know, the scheduling, some things are happening during the day or in the evening, people can't participate. Transportation can be a huge barrier as well. And then weather. I think that we spent the beginning of this session as speakers talking about weather. And we've heard from women that, you know, summer, winter, darkness, rain, ice, snow can all be big challenges for them. So some of the emotional challenges. So guilt. Women have told us over and over again that they tend to feel guilty for doing things for themselves. So this is something that, you know, we need to be able to provide some opportunities where that guilt can be minimized. Competing priorities, you know, women will feel pulled in every direction. It could be caring for children, caring for others, working, you know, everything that is kind of coming at you. Physical activity often falls off the list. Confidence. Women often lack confidence to ask questions, or maybe they need a modification because something hurts. But they said that they just rather leave sometimes than actually ask the question. So providing those opportunities for women to actually have the confidence to ask is a great way to do it. And then transitions, life changes and loss. You know, women have told us that, you know, moving to a new city where they don't have a friend base, or maybe they've lost somebody that they did physical activity with. These transitions are going to happen throughout your life. So how to make it easy for those on-ramps as women continue to age and stay active. Some of the societal challenges. So having buddies and someone to do something with is cited constantly as a challenge. You know, it's no fun. Sometimes people are very motivated to do things on their own, but other people really need somebody else. So having a buddy and providing opportunities to find buddies is really important. Having support in the home, in the work, from your partner, from your family is also really important. And then feeling included. So having those welcoming environments, not having cliques and adaptations. And it's so funny, you know, we think about cliques when we're teenagers, but those cliques tend to happen throughout our lives, unfortunately. So as leaders, it's important to notice that there's a little group that is together, and maybe somebody who is not being welcome, or they're told not to put their mat there because Susie puts her mat there. And the best way that I've found to help with this is to give them a job. People that have been there for a long time say, okay, you're part of the welcoming committee, and this person is new, and you really got to bring them in. And that does help quite a bit. Societal challenges, body image. Body image, I remember working on a project where this gentleman said to me, well, don't you get over body image? Isn't that a teenager thing? I said, no, body image is an issue, and feeling self-conscious. So, you know, women have said, please don't go to rooms with mirrors for my physical activity class. We've worked on curtains and plants and all kinds of things to help with body image. So this is a real thing to think about. Gender roles and stereotypes, you know, certainly there's certain things that women feel that they shouldn't do. Sport and physical activity can often be one of those. That's something that men do, not women do. So really kind of overcoming some of those stereotypes is really important. And then acknowledging some cultural needs. So being aware of cultural needs. There's certain women that are not able to participate in the same room as men, or they need to have some kind of cover-ups when they're swimming, or other kind of modifications. So sometimes our policies say one thing, but how can we modify those to make sure that any kind of modifications that can be made to keep everyone participating can be there for us? So some of the unique challenges for women 55 plus. So ageism is a really big one. So this is discrimination and stereotyping based on age, and women in this, you know, 55 plus category often get kind of plugged into, this is what you're supposed to do at this age, even though that's not what they want to. And you can see with that big bulge that's going through the demographics, the number of women in this age group is going to be increasing. And let me tell you, they're not ready for mall walking and aquafit only. They could love it, but they might not, and they might want something new. So it's really important that that they're not stereotyped against, and this often happens with this group. Health is going to be an issue. Inevitably, you know, the two number one things are high blood pressure and arthritis. So just planning for those two things at a minimum is really important, and making sure that you had adaptations, and also creating that door when you're working with this population to say, if you have any health concerns, please talk to me and we'll come up with adaptations. So again, that confidence thing that might not be there is going to really be helped along by you saying that. And then the last one is wording. Senior and older adult for this population can always be a barrier. Women often say, you know, I'm not a senior unless there's a discount. So, you know, how do we get around that? How do we look at some wording, really fun names, get a group of women together to say, well, what do you want to call the program? And they'll come up with something fun, I can guarantee it. So really look at how your wording is impacting this, this group. Some of the unique challenges for new mothers. So childcare is a really, really big one. Certainly little ones, when you're not able to be with them, is a problem. So having things that mom and babies can do together, but then having some opportunities for moms to actually do something on their own. A lot of women have said, you know, especially when kids get older and they're a bit more independent, they'd be happy to do things where their kids are doing one thing and they're doing another thing. And then partner support is a really big one, and especially for people new to a city that might not know their neighbors, might not have family, you know, really trying to find a way to make sure that the partner is either engaged or has a really good opportunity to let mom go and take some time for herself. Some of the unique challenges for Indigenous and newcomer women. So culture and language, which we spoke about before, is something to be really conscious of, and making sure that you're asking women what kind of things they would like in terms of cultural adaptations. I know a big one that I worked with in immigrant women is looking at food choices. So a number of the women were vegetarian, but often the snacks that we had were not. So certainly looking to make sure that the language is there, that cultural adaptations are there as well. Childcare is also flagged here as an issue, mainly because women in Indigenous communities and newcomer women can also have larger families than we are used to. So having, you know, one baby to care for or two babies, there could be a 13-year-old and there could be a baby in some families. So what kind of options are you providing for the whole family to get involved? And maybe it could be programming that can be happening at the exact same time, so that the older kids can be doing something and the younger kids can be doing something and mom can be doing something. And the last one is trauma. So women are the leaders of their families, and they take much of the stress that families go through as they deal with grief, loss, and change. So many Indigenous and newcomer women need support to help them through issues that they might be dealing with. And it's important as a leader that you're aware of and have access to services to support these women with issues they may bring forward. Additionally, you need to be flexible and patient, as some days they may not be able to attend based on other priorities they're dealing with. So reach out, offer support and kindness, and let them know they're welcome to return whenever they are ready. So really flexible programming is very important. Then some of the solutions. So one of the things that we talk about is making sure that physical literacy is that journey that women go on. And as we talked about with the on-ramps and off-ramps, your physical literacy actually changes throughout life. If you have an injury, you've had a baby, you've had something happen, you've got to maybe relearn some of these things. So, you know, we have to look at what creates confidence, competence, and motivation for women. So some of the ways of creating competence. So offer those skill training, triads, and orientations. We tend to offer these readily for children, but not always for adults. And the reality is that a lot of women really need to learn how to do some of these, or really weren't given fundamental movement skills when they were younger. So looking at those fundamental movement skills, kicking, throwing, hitting, all those things that are really important in order to play something that they might want to play. Offer that variety of activities, offer the non-structured fun, and then recruit women as instructors and coaches. There's no bigger compliment if somebody's been in your program or in your course to basically say, hey, I think you'd be great and you'd be a really good instructor. And that is that power of the invitation, but it allows people to become even more competent. So create confidence. So developing women-only programs really work well, and they provide an opportunity for women to come together, not only to play, but to be social and learn from each other. Train program leaders to read medical forms and understand health conditions so they can adapt activities. Create those welcoming environments. Develop partnerships to deliver programming so you don't have to do it all. There would be really good programs out there that might be happening in the community, so partner with them so that you can offer more varieties. Explain programs so women know what to expect. So this is, you know, women want to know if they need water, if they need a mat, if there's going to be a bathroom on the walk. You know, you need to explain more than just come here and this is the fee. And ask women what they want and make them part of your planning. This is really important. Always ask women. Then fostering motivation. So what is going to create some motivation? So food, big surprise. Food is a great motivator and really helps bring people together. It's also a great way to have potlucks and learn from each other and really have some great recipes. So food, make sure that food's involved in almost anything that you do with women. Developing a routine. So women have told us that they really like to know that things happen on Tuesday or things happen on Thursday, and that they're going to get up and meet their friend at 8 a.m. every day. If they put it into their routine, it doesn't tend to fall off the routine. So that is a really big motivator for women. So planning things that are on a schedule is a really good way to make sure that women can plan all the things in their lives around making sure they're at your programs. Having some kind of goals or rewards. These could be your own rewards, like maybe you get a brand new pair of shoes after you've done your 8-week program, or it could be things like sleeping. The big thing to get away from is weight loss. If there's anything you can do where the reward is, you played with your grandchildren or you had a better sleep, those kind of rewards are really, really motivating for women. Providing family activities so that you don't have to worry about childcare, any kind of cost savings, any kind of discounts. Women are always looking to save money, and because they feel guilty doing things for themselves, having those cost savings is really important. The power of the invitation, I will say this over and over and over again. Women that are invited tend to say yes. Women have told us they don't get a lot of invitations, especially handwritten nice ones that you might want to do, so they don't tend to turn them down. So know that you are powerful if you send that email, if you pick up that phone, if you look someone face to face and invite them. Fun has to be a part of everything. Having improved health, and then having any competitions, events, or challenges, and having these centered around raising money for causes that mean something to the women can really, really motivate more to participate. If it's something for the Children's Hospital because they're really excited about that, maybe it's around breast cancer, maybe it's around something that means something to them. So ask the women what they would like to maybe fundraise for, and then plan your competitions that way. All right. So that is a whole lot from me. So I am going to stop sharing my screen now, and I'm going to hand it over to amazing women that are going to be sharing their experiences. So Bree Thorlaskin and Sandy Ward are going to talk about effective partnerships and how they can encourage more women to get involved in mountain biking. And then we're going to hear from the pickleball ladies, Karen and Bryna and Beverly, that are going to talk about how to make pickleball more inclusive and welcoming. Okay, over to you, Bree and Sandy.
Awesome. Thank you so much for all of that. I see our slides are already up. I'm just going to introduce myself. Enchash Kalkaloki, Glilwatmkan, Shtatlumkan, Uhumutmkan. My name, Kalkaloki, is my traditional name, means the so that changes from speckled in the spring, summer, and fall to white in the winter. And me being a backcountry snowboarder, my family thought that very fitting for me. My English name is Sandy Ward. I'm from the Lietwat Nation, and I'm calling from my home territory, the Lietwat Nation in the Coast Mountains of British Columbia. And I am one of the founding members of Indigenous Women Outdoors. So we are a nonprofit organization based in the Sea to Sky, and what we are doing is breaking down barriers and accessing knowledge and gear to get more Indigenous women involved in outdoor recreational sports. So mountain biking is one of our sports, but I will pass it on to Bree to introduce herself and the biking side of things.
Thank you so much, Sandy. My name is Bree Thorlickson. I'm the Executive Director for the Pemberton Off-Road Cycling Association. PORCA, for short, is a member-based nonprofit dedicated to the development and celebration of mountain biking. I respectfully work, live, and play on the shared unceded territory of the Lil'wat Nation. PORCA has a weekly women's social ride called Bike Club that was established in 2011, and we also hold words aren't coming to me, an annual women's mountain bike race called the Spud Crusher Enduro. PORCA partnered with Sandy on this program, and thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so if we can move over to maybe the next slide. So we got together and we organized an intro to mountain biking program. And so IWO and PORCA thought there aren't a lot of Indigenous folks involved in mountain biking within our lands. And we are in a mountain biking mecca in Canada. And why don't we see more Indigenous people out there? So we got together and formed this Intro to Mountain Biking program last spring. It was a 4-week program. So we had 10 women from the Lietwat Nation involved in a 1 day per week. So we ran it in evenings, as we found that that was a good time for the women that were wanting to be involved. That was good for them to, you know, deal with childcare and things like that. So we supplied the gear and we supplied the coaches, and it was a very open program and it worked very well for us. We retained most of the women throughout the 4-week program, so that was absolutely amazing. And we had some really good feedback at the end from all of the women that were involved. But yeah, how and why did we do this? If we could go to the next slide, I can toss that back to Bree.
Okay, how and why we did it. Finding an Indigenous leader, which is Sandy, that was interested in helping with this project was extremely important to make sure there was a need and want in the community. We're extremely thankful to the WISE Fund for supporting this collaboration between IWO and PORCA. Getting the word out about the project was coordinated by Sandy and IWO. Interest was strong, and this is likely due to the reputation IWO has within the community already. The majority of the trails people used to mountain bike in Pemberton were built without permission or consideration of the traditional and historic uses of the areas. This is a long-standing issue that the mountain bike community needs to reconcile. This project connected two communities in a new way. It gave the opportunity for conversation about the land, how and why we use it the way we do. It gave women an opportunity to connect with the land and each other, and it created different perspectives through mountain biking. Hand it back to you, Sandy, for the barriers.
So obviously lots of barriers trying to organize programming during a pandemic. So first off, like mountain biking is outdoor. So that was a bit easy for us. We didn't have to worry about being inside or anything. We're not a contact sport, hopefully. And yeah, so those were on our side. We did need to keep our group sizes down, even though we were outdoors. It was still, we didn't want to be gathering in large groups. So we kept it down to 10 women. And then we had 4 coaches and then myself involved in that as well. So yeah, the equipment was a huge one. We live in a very small rural town, and there are no bike rental shops in our town. The last one, I think they just sold their bikes pre-COVID, and then the supply chain for bikes just wasn't there. So there were no bikes. So we had to reach out to other organizations and other companies. And thankfully, having Bree involved with all of her contacts through PORCA, through Squamish Off-Road Cycling Association, so SORCA, that really helped out. And we were able to actually track down bikes down in Squamish. So that is, for anybody not familiar with our territory, that's an hour drive from Pemberton. So getting these 10 bikes, that was another, how are we going to do that? We didn't have a trailer. We didn't have any way really. But thankfully, the people that supplied the bikes hopped in and offered to bring those bikes up for free, which was absolutely amazing and lifted a huge weight off of our shoulders, because it was, I think, maybe a week before the program had started, we were still looking for bikes. So equipment was a huge thing. Lack of beginner terrain. I was saying that mountain biking in Pemberton is pretty huge sport. It's very good for more advanced riders. we have very, very little beginner terrain. So in our, thoughts of who's going to coach, we were able to find some really amazing coaches through Porca that were able to get creative with how they were teaching the program. So they were able to, the photo here, we're in a park, you're not thinking about mountain biking here, but it was a great spot for us to build our skills before heading out to those somewhat more difficult trails that that we have out here. And we were able to just like kind of cut the trails in half sometimes. So we weren't going all the way to the top. We were using the terrain that was lower down, that was maybe a bit easier for them to access and easier riding altogether. And then another thing was bikes being hard to find. What happens after the program when those women don't have bikes anymore? How were we going to motivate them to get out after the thing was done? And that was a really hard one. So what I did through my contacts with Indigenous Women Outdoors is we reached out to another organization or another shop in Whistler, and they were gracious enough to organize bikes for the Wednesday bike club that Porca puts on. So we were still working with Porca after the 4-week program. So we really created that lasting relationship. And we were able to get, I think there was 2 women that followed on through and came to bike club. I also volunteered my time to help out in the bike park if they wanted to go to the bike park. And so just really trying to keep that interest after, and hopefully we'll be able to run it again next year with maybe a little bit more experienced, and maybe we'll even get some of the women certified as coaches. So that was a really helpful part that that I was able to take on, because the WISE Fund part of our application was to have one Indigenous woman certified as a bike guide. And so that was what I did before the program started. So it gave me some really good training and experience as a bike guide, and seeing kind of how a bike lesson was run, giving me more confidence to organize the program next year. So hopefully we'll have some women from last year come back and take on my role from this year. So that would be pretty sweet. But yeah, we can pass that over to Bree. Oh, actually, I can talk about this too. Yeah, so stories of impact. How did we know we were successful? Afterwards, Porca asked a few questions to some of the participants and put together a few posts, and it happened to be over Indigenous History Month. So that was pretty cool to be highlighted on the Porca social media, and have, I think it was 3 women that were highlighted over the few weeks. And it was just really cool to hear their stories and how encouraging it is to have Indigenous women come together and learn a new sport that can honestly be very scary. The lady that's in the photo here, she was absolutely amazing. I think she was in her 50s and joined us and just killed it. She's going off a jump there, so that was pretty sweet. And she actually got her kids involved in the next program that I ran through Indigenous Life Sport Academy. So it's now a family thing. So hopefully that family will be biking for life. I do get out and see them sometimes on the trails out here in Pemberton, so that's pretty sweet. And another thing is, yeah, we want to see more Indigenous representation within the bike industry. And I think we're moving towards that with programs like the one that Bree and I organized together. See myself as a mountain bike guide now. That's already a start. And then we had one lady that was a member of the program, and she's now really interested in getting her biking certification so that she can volunteer and help out for the programs like Bree and I ran, and also for the youth within the community. So we're really just setting the community up for success in the mountain bike world. So that's pretty amazing. And having women as the instructors for those youth that's going to be a really cool thing to see, and also giving opportunities to women from the Lillooet Nation to work with Porca as bike guides, and just tightening that community building that relationship between Litwat and the Pemberton biking community. So that's all super important, and that all starts with programs like we ran last spring. So yeah, can turn it over to Bree.
Thanks, Sandy. We just thought we'd finish with some tips for non-Indigenous organizations looking to do something like we did. Firstly, evaluate your programs. Look to the data with an equity, diversity, and inclusion lens. Who is participating, who is not? You likely have work to do. Source decolonization educational opportunities for staff, volunteers, and board members. I think that's really a first step. Learn about the First Nations communities in your area. Learn the language. Look for community opportunities to start build relationships. Find out what Indigenous recreation opportunities already exist and connect with those leaders to learn what is needed and wanted in the community. Don't assume your program is needed or wanted. And intent is everything. Build a relationship based on working in a good way. Be open to learning about non-colonial systems and incorporate these into your organization to create an inclusive and culturally safe space. And just be patient, adaptable, and committed. Keep learning, don't give up. Sandy and I had to rethink how we were delivering the program after the first week, and we had to back it up a little bit and really think about what are we doing here, you know? And so we needed to try to find trails that were a little bit easier and build up. The trails weren't as important as like the communications that were happening, the conversations during that experience. So I think we learned a lot during this program, and I'm really excited to do it again in the spring. Thank you.
Fantastic. Wonderful. Thanks so much, Sandy and Bree. That was amazing and very inspirational. It's too bad it's winter coming up here in Ottawa, or I'd be maybe trying to figure out how to get out to the trails. Awesome. Okay, well, thanks again. Lots of great learnings from that. And we're going to turn it over to Karen, Bryna, and Beverly. Kristen, I think you're going to be sharing your screen for that. And we'll hear a little bit about pickleball.
Thank you, Shelly. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Rust, and as president of Pickleball Canada, I'm delighted to address this Engaging Women in Active Living webinar. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge that I'm coming to you today from the city of Regina, Saskatchewan, which is located in the Treaty 4 territory, the original lands of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, and today, with the number of celebrities taking up the sport of pickleball and the coverage it is getting in print and on the screen, there aren't very many people who have not heard of the sport of pickleball. This wasn't always the case, though. The origin of the sport goes back to the 1960s, when a couple of dads living on Bainbridge Island, Washington, put together some odds and ends of equipment to create a game to play with their kids. The big boost didn't come until the 1970s, though, when it became commonly played in the snowbird roosts in the southern US. The Canadian snowbirds brought the game back to Canada and started looking for places to play. It was 2009 before the first pickleball organization was formed. Assortment of programs spreading across the country. Which I represent, was incorporated in 2010 as a nonprofit corporation with the mission to assist and promote the growth of pickleball as a game for all ages and to establish rules, policies, and standards for the good governance of the game in Canada. Pickleball is known as the, the fastest growing sport in the world, with over 4 million players worldwide. And we've certainly experienced that growth in Canada, with membership in Pickleball Canada tripling in the past 5 years and continuing to surge. There are an estimated 350,000 Canadians playing the sport, with over 26,000 active members of the Pickleball Canada organization. And women have consistently played leadership roles in the development of the sport, and the current gender balance for Pickleball Canada members is 53% female, with an average age of 61. That average age is declining, though, as we see more younger adults and more junior players taking up the sport. The 26,000 Pickleball Canada members are found across Canada with provincial associations in 10 provinces and territories and 166 local affiliated clubs. And that's actually closer to 170 now. We've had some new ones just very recently. This is a picture of the pickleball courts in Red Deer, Alberta, where we had 800 athletes completing over 6 days in August 2021. And this was the largest tournament held to date in Canada. And this is just a picture of some happy medal winners at the Red Deer Championships. We take pictures of all of them and see the big grins on their faces. The national body of Pickleball Canada arranges for insurance benefits, provides education of officials, sanctions tournaments, and most recently worked with Canada to develop a Coaching Association of Canada recognized certified coach education. One remarkable fact with respect to the Pickleball Canada organization is that all this growth has been entirely through the efforts of our many dedicated volunteers. While we are recognized as a national sport organization for pickleball, as the organization for pickleball, we receive no funding from Sport Canada, at least so far. And we are hoping to become eligible in the not too distant future for funding.
Hey, Karen. Sorry, I'm just going to jump in because there's a little bit of static. I think you're bumping your microphone a bit. Not sure if that's something, if you can just move it, maybe.
Yeah, well, it's built into my computer, so we'll hopefully this will work better. Is that
Okay,
better?
my mistake.
Is that
Yep,
better now?
that's great. Thank you.
So, all right. So you may wonder, what is the appeal of pickleball? Well, the cost of entry is very low compared to most sports, and it's relatively easy to learn at least the basics in order to play. You can take about an hour and a half long lesson and feel pretty confident you know how to do this sport. And the very social aspect is key. There's typically lots of time between games to have a good visit while on the bench waiting for your turn. And players generally participate in a large group and change partners for every game. And you don't need to have your partner already lined up before you even start. You generally show up as an individual. And most clubs arrange for separate sessions for different skill levels so that the newer players have a good experience and the competitive ones have similar skill level players to provide a challenge that's appropriate and enjoyable. This keeps everyone happy and coming back for more. So speaking of happy, there's always lots of laughter on the pickleball court, and I hope you find an opportunity to join us. Thank you. And I'll now ask Brianna Coppola to continue with her part of the pickleball presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Brianna Coppola, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I'm a Pickleball Canada board member, and I work in the area of equity, diversity, and inclusion with the Pickleball Canada board. My work takes place on the unceded traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations. Pickleball Canada has launched a new 3-year strategic plan and advancing pickleball for life. And within that plan, equity, diversity, inclusion, and belonging is embedded. We highlight 4 different areas. We're looking at organizational culture, education and awareness, advocacy, policy, and procedures. And when we're talking about the meaning and importance of inclusion, equity, and safe pickleball, we talk about inclusion in the area of feeling and the reality of belonging, being able to participate in ways that are meaningful, understanding and respecting diversity, actively involving people from diverse groups. When we talk about equity, we're talking about allocating resources, developing programs, and making decisions that result in opportunities for all participants, using a lens to examine barriers and improve access. And finally, when we talk about safe, we're talking about environments to participate and compete in without fear of protecting the security, safety, and health of our pickleball community. And to reemphasize some of the points that Shelly made specifically in relation to pickleball, the key issues influencing women's participation in relation to this game are physical literacy and basic sport skill acquisition, role models and leaders, and having a female-friendly environment and programming. And specifically when we're talking about a female-friendly environment, we're talking about environments, the physical environments that are safe, that are clean, that have good quality equipment, welcoming staff and volunteers, that they're accessible, they're affordable, they have a realistic time commitment, and they're inclusive in terms of the language, signage, and posters, and that we have awareness of promotion and promoting our programs in somewhat non-traditional places. When we're looking at social environments, we're talking about connection to group and leaders. And when we're talking about physical and mental engagement, we're talking about supportive and developmentally appropriate environments to learn and master new skills and to experience success. Lots of opportunities within pickleball. It is, as we've just heard, a relatively new and a fast-growing sport. But what that really means for us is that we've got the potential to learn from our previous mistakes and adopt and implement some incredible best practices. We talked about the low costs. The sport is accessible. It's played indoors, it's played outdoors, it's played in the day and in the evening, which does assist with some of the family responsibilities. Lots of women entertain. It's relatively inexpensive in terms of the equipment, the clothing, the program fees, often offered locally, so it covers some of the transportation issues. It is easy to learn the basics. You don't need previous sport experience. It's easy to transfer from other racket sports. It can be played slowly and can be easier on the body. Simple to start playing at any age, whether you're young or more senior. And it's more about skill than it is about age. Some of the other great opportunities is it does, in fact, as Karen just said, builds community and social connection. It can be offered either women only or in co-ed situations. And the beautiful, unique aspect of pickleball is that it can be intergenerational. Teens can play with their parents, kids can play with their grandparents, and that is a very, I think, unique and incredible aspect and opportunity within this sport. But what's really important, I think, is that we need to understand that inclusion is more than just stating on a program guide that everyone is welcome. You need to have some basic physical literacy skills, and you need to know the basic rules. And you find, as Shelly also talked about, the girls and women also have many of the same issues and barriers. And so it's important for us to keep those in mind as we're doing our programming. When we're talking about ensuring that there's going to be a positive experience, we need to anticipate the needs of a new growing sport and design programs to ensure a positive experience. We need to solicit feedback and ask those that are taking our programs how they're feeling, what they need, and why maybe perhaps they didn't come back. We need to offer intro sessions to learn the basic skills and the rules of the game. And in many cases, we need to either have a paid instructor or a volunteer facilitator at the sessions. And some of the recommendations to ensure that positive experience: we need to make people feel welcome. We need to learn people's names and introduce newcomers to the group. And we need to, in recreational play, beginner, intermediate, and advanced players generally need to be separated. We need to organize ways to play that encourages game flow, that discourages cliques, as we've talked about, that promotes, that consciously and intentionally promotes mixing, people mixing with people that they may not know while playing with others with similar skill abilities. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Beverly to talk about, in fact, one of the best practices.
Beverly, you're muted.
Hello, my name is Beverly Deit, and I am the co-founder and current vice president of the Victoria Pickleball Association. Okay, so I started playing pickleball about 8 years ago in the Comox Valley, and then moved to Victoria in 2014. And the following year in 2015, I started a women's group, and I actually manage about 5 other groups too, ranging from mixed groups, which I do that twice a week. Also, young adults, we just started that. So people from in their early 20s to 35. Juniors, which are anyone under the age of 17. And also just started a private drills and skills group. And I forgot to say that I am presenting from the Coast Salish territory in Victoria here. Okay, now let's just say, okay, from some of the points that were said, it seems that our group is doing pretty good. Okay, so basically there's anywhere between 8 and 16 people at any time. And this is based on the court availability, also to things like people's schedules, the time of year, because we have snowbirds and different age women that play, and individual schedules, and also life gets in the way sometimes. But on a whole, everyone makes it out regularly and at least once a week or so. Okay, now we're fortunate here in BC to have quite temperate weather. So whether it's raining or snowing or anything like that, we're always prepared. Everyone has leaf blowers, we have squeegees, towels, brooms, shovels, whatever. So neither rain nor snow really keeps us from the courts. And I mean, I don't know if you know much about pickleball, but that is actually not so good sometimes, because if you're located in a residential area, they're not quite on board as we are with this. Okay, now we have with the group organized playtimes. We work cooperatively with everyone in the group. What happens is we usually start off, like was stated previously, with beginner groups, and I manage intermediate groups, and there's advanced groups. So what happens is we do drill sessions to get everybody up to speed, and we recognize and actually go seeking people that we think can transition from the beginner to or group, and then transition further, people that are easier, like that are willing to learn. And what we have is a mentor program. So whoever's in each of the group, whether it's beginner, intermediate, or advanced, what we do is help the new folks that are came into the group and give them little pointers in order to attain the skill level that they need to advance. In the group too, everyone has a say. We always want to be moving with a certain goal in mind and certain skill level, but also too, we also want people to say what's working, what's not working, so that way we can work cooperatively. Okay, now we try to be supportive on and off the court, like I said previously, with the mentoring, with the goals and that. We also have a round robin format, so everyone can actually play with and against each other. So it's a nice friendly competition. If you what you can see by the next picture is that it's quite social too. What we do is we do things like barbecues. We go to different communities to play friendly competition. I know that's an oxymoron to me anyhow, but anyhow, competition with other communities, up island, off island, and it's been working really well so far. We have, by the next picture, you'll see that everyone brings different dishes in that, so it's a quite array of things, so everybody contributes in that way too, just to keep it friendly and check in with each other, I guess. It was mentioned too about things like kids, grandkids, and that. What we do actually is when we have a certain time to play in that, we try to do things outside of that, not to book doctor's appointments, anything outside of there, and everything like that, or have the grandkids with whoever has them. But what we do too, in case they can't get out of it, we always have an odd number of people playing, so that way someone's there to actually help out with the child looking at, or the dog puppy sitting, or whatever there is. So it gives everyone free time to do certain things that they need to do. So it builds a sense of community and inclusivity too, I believe. And the next slide is going to show you what we do sometimes too. We'll go, this was up in Fuller Lake. After a hard day of playing that, a lot of us went back to one of the hosting people's places, and what we did was go in after pickleball, swim in that. And first and foremost, what we try and do is have a lot of fun, which we usually do. And that's basically it from me.
Fantastic, wonderful. I'm just going to quickly share my screen so that I can be ready. Okay, I think that's sharing, right? No? There we go. Thank you so much, Karen and Bryna and Beverly. That was awesome learning about pickleball. I know that in a lot of the programs that we've done across Canada, pickleball has been something that everybody is looking into or they're already trying. So hopefully everyone got some really great ideas on how you can modify your programs and the type of support that's out there through Pickleball Canada if you're looking at developing something. So I want to just quickly look at some of the follow-up pieces, and then we'll get into some questions if anybody has them. So develop women's only programs. You've heard about how those work. Really, really important to try to do that. Invite women to participate. Invitations mean a lot, and they can be handwritten. A handwritten invitation goes very, very far. Create environments that are welcoming and fun. We heard about that in both presentations today, which is great. Incorporate skill development. We also heard about that. You don't want to be going down a mountain without learning some skills, or even a hill or anything like that. And the same with pickleball. That skill development is really key. Develop partnerships to deliver programming. Some of the partnerships that are happening out there are really innovative, and certainly what Bree and Sandy talked about are really something that we can all learn a lot from. And then ask women what they want and make them part of their programming. Then there's additional resources out there that we just want to highlight to learn more about different groups, and we're certainly going to be able to provide that in the follow-up pieces. But why don't we take a little bit of time now to see if anybody has any questions. So Crystal, I guess if somebody wants to ask a question, they just unmute themselves.
That's correct.
Okay. So does anyone have any questions for any of our speakers? Anyone? I've got a question, actually, Beverly. I was interested in how you you have that odd number in case somebody needs to take care of puppies or grandchildren. Who does people have to draw a straw to see who ends up in that spot, or how do you do it?
We take turns, just like anything else, just like when we're doing things like meals or bringing treats after this, we all take turns.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. I love that the puppies were included as well as the grandkids. That's great.
I've seen a picture that was really interesting. It was a bunch of young mothers playing pickleball, and there's playpens lined up right beside the courts, beside the fence, with all the little ones watching and playing with their toys or snoozing or whatever.
That's great. That's, these are all great ways. I think that when we're engaging women, we need to think about all their responsibilities that they have. So any way that we can make it easier is fantastic. So, and when you have things like that, do you communicate it to new members so that they know, or is it just something they learn over time?
No, we do. And also too, what I didn't mention before too, is what happens is we have people coming in from different countries too. So it goes by word of mouth. So we have women transferring in here. I have a list of about 60, and some of them are here different times of the year and that. So it's everything's by word of mouth, by friends invitations and things like that. And yeah, we do. We make sure everyone knows exactly what we're offering.
Awesome. Awesome. And then Sandy, when you were talking about the community programs that the women are leading, how are those communicated to get the whole family involved, like you were talking?
So I'm from a very, very small nation, so getting the word out for anything is very simple. It's just a Facebook post, and then that's shared throughout the community. And yeah, so we have two larger organizations that are supporting these programming. So it's Indigenous Women Outdoors and Indigenous Life Sport Academy. Indigenous Life Sport Academy has a huge presence within not just the Sea to Sky corridor, but all of British Columbia, even like all through Canada. So using social media to access or to I guess get the word out for those different things. And we take a lot of individuals that have been a part of our programming and just see if they're interested in pursuing getting different certifications, like your guiding for biking or even snowboard instructing or anything like that. So we usually kind of grow within our own organizations.
Awesome. Awesome. That's great. Thank you.
Shelly, we do have a question from Lori.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Lori.
Hi. These are fantastic examples. I have a specific question regarding pickleball. And if any of the speakers have examples of how they may have adapted the game or skills and drills for people, women or other people who may be participating who have some sort of mobility issues. And so whether they have used like a 2-bounce rule or if they have women in wheelchairs who are playing.
There are a number of wheelchair athletes playing pickleball in Quebec. It's gotten quite a popular following there, and they either play all people in wheelchairs or they'll be mixed people, not in wheelchairs and some that are. In fact, that some of the athletes in wheelchairs compete in the able-bodied competitions with no. Well, I guess there are some extra considerations. They can have it 2 ounces on the ball, for example, with the wheelchair. And we have people like there's a fellow that plays with us regularly. He's paralyzed on one side. He gets out and plays, and it's a welcoming sport. And with the different levels of skill groupings, they'll play with where they can fit in and feel comfortable.
Fantastic.
Great. Thanks, Lori. Thanks, Karen.
Great, and we have 2 more questions, Janaya.
Yeah, this is for Bree and Sandy. I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more. You had mentioned that after the first session, you realized you had to adjust things a bit, like with maybe easier trails. I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more to, yeah, like how that first session went.
I could speak to that. Normally I coach for a women's coaching company up here, a commercial operator. And we usually have like we call it a big intermediate. That you can only start as big intermediate in Pemberton because we have no beginner trails. So we tried to start the ladies on a big intermediate trail, and a few of them, there was a lot of anxiety trying something new, right? And so people are breathing deeply, worried, and it was just too much. And so we had to back off, and we needed to do the skill development in a flat, really approachable terrain. And so we really were like looking at it from eyes of people maybe have biked before, whereas the ladies, most of the ladies that we had never mountain biked before. So we really had to back it up to like a more introductory level. So I learned a lot as a coach during that instance, and we just backed it up. Sandy, you have anything to add there?
Just like even you think, okay, a beginner mountain biker, yeah, what is that? Going from a regular like street bike to going onto a full suspension mountain bike with disc brakes is really intimidating. As soon as you hit those brakes, it can cause a lot of anxiety because you do get that jolt. So yeah, a lot of women that had applied had been like, yeah, I've been biking before, I've done this, but nobody had really been on so that's why we kind of had to step it back and teach those like very basics of disc brakes and the shocks and absorption and everything. So yeah, mountain biking really, is a bit more.
Really making sure that the women knew that any question they asked wasn't stupid. Like I had, one lady say to me, I was teaching them to stand up off their saddle, and she was like, I didn't know you stood up off your saddle ever, so that was like I was like, oh yeah, we do that. So it was like kind of like a mind-blowing sort of thing for somebody who mountain bikes all the time. But then you're like, oh, of course, how would a person know to do that if it's not through experience? And a lot of these women didn't have the opportunity to have that experience. So it was really interesting.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks. There's another question, Crystal.
Hi, I had a question for Karen from the Pickleball Canada. Just wondering how, as like a national Canadian organization, you kind of do this outreach to get more women in the sport. Could you just talk a little bit more about like the specifics of, are there specifics of things you do for like across Canada, and what that looks like as a national organization? Yeah.
It's interesting. Most of our new members, our new players come through word of mouth. And so, you know, you get some women involved and then next they're bringing their friends. We've been growing very fast without having to really try very hard, actually. And because in so many communities, there's a shortage of courts and opportunities to play. We haven't ever had to really do a big push to get members. So it's mostly been a word of mouth thing. And a lot of the women are leaders. It seems like the woman that got me introduced to pickleball here in Regina, you know, she just was a really good example, and we just joined in. And we've got a very good history of being welcoming and friendly. And a lot of, especially say new retired ladies, like we have whole big groups of recently retired ladies that just get together every day at a certain time, and then they'll go for coffee after. It's just a very social thing for them. So I'm sorry, I don't have any particular programs to mention, but it would be very easy to advertise a women's only session. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And we do have some of our regular play sessions are set aside as just for women, and they tend to be quite popular.
Cool, thank you.
And certainly, Karen, building on that, you know, having any leader that takes kind of the bull by the horn, so to speak, to do something is often how a lot of things get started. Just really, really interested leaders in the community that then try to work with their recreation departments, or maybe it's just a court that's out there, and then suddenly they get connected and then they get plugged into the national organization. So, you know, a lot of these things happen a bit by osmosis, and obviously pickleball is hot because you're growing like crazy. So really exciting. Okay, well, I'm just conscious of time. I don't know, Crystal, if there was any other quick questions.
Not that I see.
Okay, great. So I'm going to just finish off then. So, you know, we're committed to improving the program. So we have a QR code here that if anybody wants to scan and provide feedback, I know that we're sending feedback as well. You'll get an email asking for some feedback on the workshop. We'd really like to hear from you. And then really want to thank everybody for attending today. Certainly all of our participants for joining us, for our amazing presenters. So excited to hear what you had to say. I know we've been talking for a while, so big thanks to Bree, Sandy, Karen, Bryna, and Beverly, to Crystal as our amazing tech behind the scenes, and Kristen, you were running the slides for pickleball, so I want to give you a shout out as well. And then, you know, on behalf of Canadian Women in Sports, CPRA, big thanks to our funder, the Government of Canada through Sport Canada, and looking forward to having you involved as participants in future workshops. Certainly these are open to everybody, and really looking forward to all the learnings and sharings we're able to do with that. So thanks again for attending, and look forward to next time.